So it's Veterans Day. It's Veterans Day Monday, I guess. Veterans Day was actually 11/11, which is when World War I ended. It is exactly 100 years since the end of World War I. Seems like to me it's like only yesterday, but it is a wonderful day. You know, it is a day to remember. It's interesting. It's one of those days that hasn't quite lost its meaning. You know, Memorial Day, when we remember our war dead, has become barbecue day, and it's become the beginning of summer. But Veterans Day really does retain its meaning in a lot of ways, and it is a wonderful thing to remember the people who served, the people who did these. You know, I always say, you know, you don't just say thank you for your service. You say, you know, thank you for the walk in the park I took with my wife. Thank you for the fact that I can read a book. Thank you for the fact that I can do this show and go to the opera and all the different things that we do because we're kept safe. Because, you know, our military is doubly great. Our military is doubly great because it's not just that they fight and risk themselves and put themselves in danger and stand guard for us. It's what they fight for. You know, that makes such a difference. It really does matter what people are fighting for. And I remember when the Army went into Iraq, I believe it was the first time under the first President Bush, when they went into Iraq and the war was over in like 6 days. And I remember them marching in, and as they were marching in, the locals were throwing themselves at the soldiers' feet and clasping their feet, and the soldiers were picking them up again. They didn't want to see people kneel. They didn't want to see people kneel to them because they're Americans. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You know, that's what armies used to do. Armies used to come in and conquer. Where have our armies conquered? Nowhere. Where have they stayed? Nowhere. Sometimes they stay and help and patrol and keep the peace, but they never stay and say, oh, by the way, this is going to be your new prime minister. This is going to be your new president. You know, we don't do that. We don't empire build, and we don't want people to bow down to us because we're Americans. I mean, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think, you know, I mean, when we remember them, when we remember the veterans, when we remember the soldiers, in the same way when we remember the firefighters, when we remember the policemen, it gives us a broader view of what our lives really are, because you can fool yourself into thinking that you live a peaceful life. You can fool yourself into thinking that you're a pacifist, you're some kind of elevated creature who doesn't have to deal with the vagaries of evil, doesn't have to deal with the vagaries of violence. But in fact, you've just farmed that job out to someone else. I mean, if like me, you've never been in the military, which I deeply regret, by the way, but if you've never been, you realize you should. Sometimes people would say to me, well, why do you express all this gratitude to the military? Aren't you a hypocrite? You're never in the military. No, that makes me more grateful to the people who are out there doing these things, making this life possible. And, you know, it does seem to me that we owe them something. We don't owe them, you know, we don't owe our military some kind of super loyalty. We don't owe them any kind of sentimental respect. They're not above the law. They're not above the traditions and laws of our country. But we do owe them that we live in the way that they defend, which